Something fundamental has just broken inside Russia's war machine. The once feared arsenal, which for years projected power across its borders, now lies battered and exposed. The world is witnessing a dramatic unraveling of Russian military might, as its armored columns and advanced weaponry are left in ruins on the battlefield. A terrifying new reality is unfolding in the skies over Ukraine, and Putin seems powerless to stop it. The night is lit up by the relentless exchange of fire as Ukrainian air defenses intercept wave after wave of Russian drones and missiles. The air war has become a nightly spectacle, a deadly dance of technology and resolve. For months, Russia bombarded Ukraine with drones and missiles seeking to break the nation's spirit and infrastructure. But now, a dramatic escalation has pushed the conflict into uncharted territory. The attacks have grown more frequent, more destructive, and more desperate, signaling a shift in both tactics and stakes. This isn't just another attack. It's a strategic shift with global implications. Military analysts and world leaders are scrambling to understand the new rules of engagement as the conflict threatens to redraw the balance of power far beyond Eastern Europe. The Kremlin thought it could control this aerial onslaught, but the strategy has backfired spectacularly. Russian commanders, once confident in their plans, now face mounting frustration and confusion as their expectations collapse. The campaign has triggered staggering military losses, with entire units decimated and equipment abandoned. The cost in both lives and materiel is mounting, eroding the morale of Russian forces on the front lines. In response, a desperate recruitment drive has begun, spiraling out of Moscow's control. Young men are being swept up in a wave of conscription, fueling unrest and anxiety across Russian society. Putin has ignited a blaze he can no longer contain, shaking the very foundations of his regime. The consequences of his decisions are now visible, not just on the battlefield, but in the uneasy faces of his inner circle and the growing tension in Moscow's streets. The world is watching as a superpower is trapped by the very weapon it chose to wield. International observers and leaders are closely monitoring every development, aware that the outcome could reshape the global order. Russia is now locked in a cycle of escalation it cannot win, but also cannot afford to lose. The relentless pace of conflict is draining its resources and resolve, leaving its military stretched thin and its people weary. This is the story of how a calculated strategy of terror became a self-inflicted wound, leaving Putin a spectator to his own disaster. As the war grinds on, the consequences of these choices will echo far beyond Russia's borders, shaping the future of warfare and the fate of nations. The drone war was a calculated evolution in Russian military strategy, born from the failures of the initial ground invasion. When Moscow's plan to capture Kiev collapsed, Russia turned to the skies, launching long-range missile strikes on critical infrastructure. The goal: make life unbearable for Ukrainian civilians and forced surrender. But precision missiles were expensive, and stockpiles dwindled. Enter the Iranian-designed Shahed drone, cheap, mass-produced, and renamed Guran by Russia. These drones, launched in relentless swarms, overwhelmed air defenses and terrorized cities. The shift to drones marked a new, brutal phase, a psychological war of attrition. Russia could now sustain bombardment at a scale previously impossible, signaling a long, grinding conflict. This reliance on remote warfare created a dangerous illusion of control. Moscow believed it could sustain this pressure indefinitely, a miscalculation now haunting Putin. The drone-centric campaign has set the stage for the massive escalation we see today. Russia has dramatically escalated its aerial assault, unleashing over 6,400 drones and missiles in just a single month, an unprecedented figure that shatters all previous records. This relentless barrage marks a new phase in the conflict, with the scale and intensity of attacks reaching levels never seen before. For millions of Ukrainian civilians, this escalation means spending countless hours in bomb shelters, huddled together as air raid sirens wail above. The constant threat of attack has become a grim routine, forcing families to seek safety underground at all hours, disrupting daily life and instilling a deep, unending sense of fear. The human cost is devastating. Civilian casualties have surged, with the death toll reaching its highest point in years. Emergency responders work tirelessly, racing against time to save lives amid the rubble, but the scale of destruction often overwhelms even their heroic efforts. The psychological toll is equally immense. Once bustling cities have been transformed into frontline zones, where anxiety and uncertainty hang heavy in the air. For many, the simple act of walking outside now carries unimaginable risk. Despite facing overwhelming odds, Ukraine's air defense forces have performed with remarkable courage and skill, intercepting the majority of incoming threats. Their vigilance has saved countless lives and prevented even greater devastation. But the system is stretched to its absolute limit. The sheer volume of attacks is designed to exhaust resources and find cracks in the shield, testing the endurance and resilience of every operator on the front lines. Even when just a small percentage of missiles or drones slip through, the consequences are catastrophic. Entire neighborhoods can be reduced to ruins in moments, and critical infrastructure is left burning. Russia is betting on its ability to produce and launch drones at a pace that outstrips Ukraine's capacity to shoot them down. Factories are working around the clock, churning out new waves of unmanned weapons. Moscow is rapidly expanding its production lines, and military analysts warn that the number of drones launched could soon reach up to 2,000 per day, a staggering figure that would push any defense system to the brink. If such a scenario unfolds, Ukraine's defenses could be completely overwhelmed, leading to widespread catastrophe and further loss of life and infrastructure. This is not a temporary surge or a passing phase. It has become the new, terrifying baseline for daily life in Ukraine. The threat is constant, and the sense of safety has all but vanished. The war has evolved into a relentless numbers game, where each side races to outproduce and outlast the other, and every statistic represents real lives at stake. The escalation shows no sign of ending. Night after night, the skies are lit up by explosions, and the cycle of attack and defense grinds on without pause. The skies over Ukraine have become a battleground of attrition, where technology, endurance, and sheer willpower are tested every single day. The outcome remains uncertain, but the scale of this aerial war is unlike anything the world has seen in decades. The drone war is reshaping the conflict's political, economic, and social landscape. Politically, the attacks project Russian strength but also reveal its failure to win on the ground. Economically, Russia leverages cheap drones against Ukraine's expensive air defenses, aiming to bankrupt its opponent. But this strategy also drains Russia's own resources, making it dependent on a single, costly approach. Socially, Ukraine has adapted to a state of permanent alert, forging unity and defiance. In Russia, the war is sold as remote and bloodless, but Ukrainian drone strikes are shattering that illusion. Globally, the conflict is a testing ground for new drone tactics, upending traditional military doctrines. The effectiveness of cheap drones is changing how wars are fought worldwide. Disruptions to global supply chains, especially grain, are a direct result of attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure. The drone war is not just Ukraine's problem, it's a global one. At the heart of Putin's strategy lies a dangerous paradox, a contradiction that defines his grip on Russia and the war in Ukraine. Experts say he's trapped in a relentless feedback loop. The ongoing drone war demands a constant flow of resources, technology, and manpower, draining the nation's economy and morale. Each new wave of drones and soldiers sent to the front lines only increases the devastating costs for Russia, both in lives and in national stability. Overwhelming Ukraine with sheer numbers has led to staggering casualties. This approach has created a vicious cycle. Massive losses force more recruitment, and each new recruit faces the same grim fate. The human toll is mounting, and the cycle of recruitment and loss seems endless. Putin is now a prisoner of his own war machine. He cannot de-escalate without admitting defeat, a move that would shatter his image of strength. Yet, continuing the war only deepens Russia's crisis, pushing the country further into isolation and hardship. In authoritarian systems like Putin's, bad news rarely reaches the top. Advisors and officials, fearful of repercussions, often filter or soften the truth. As a result, Putin may not fully grasp the true cost and consequences of his strategy. Generals, under immense pressure to report only success, keep throwing more resources into a failing approach. They double down on flawed tactics, hoping for a breakthrough that never comes. This growing disconnect between Kremlin ambitions and the harsh reality on the front lines is dangerous. It breeds confusion, frustration, and a sense of betrayal among those actually fighting the war. The drone war was meant to showcase Russian technological might and military innovation. Instead, it has exposed a reliance on brutal attrition and outdated strategies, revealing deep vulnerabilities in Russia's military machine. Losses are mounting, and the need for constant recruitment can't be hidden forever. The impact is felt in Russian cities and villages, where families grieve and young men fear the draft. Every drone launched, every new offensive, only deepens Russia's crisis. The war machine grinds on, but at a terrible cost. Putin started this fire, but now, the flames are beyond his control. The war he unleashed has become a force of its own, threatening to consume everything in its path. His powerlessness is now on full display, both to his people and to the world. The paradox of Putin's power is that, in trying to appear invincible, he has revealed just how vulnerable he truly is. The drone war in the sky is fueling a bloodbath on the ground. In 2024 alone, at least 45,287 Russian soldiers were confirmed killed, triple the previous year's losses. Each number is a life lost in a brutal war of attrition. One missile strike killed 65 Russian soldiers at a medal ceremony, underscoring the front line's deadly reality. For every square kilometer gained, 27 Russian soldiers died, a staggering price for minimal advantage. Russia's command treats troops as disposable, prioritizing territory over lives. The relentless push for gains demands a constant flow of replacements. The drone war supports these assaults, but doesn't prevent the slaughter. The Kremlin is trapped in a strategy demanding endless sacrifice. The human toll is spiraling beyond Putin's control. To offset catastrophic losses, the Kremlin has launched a desperate recruitment drive. Huge cash incentives lure men from poorer regions, turning enlistment into economic coercion. Many recruits receive minimal training and are sent straight into combat, often poorly equipped. High casualty rates among these volunteers reflect Russia's desperation. This strategy exploits financial vulnerability, fueling a war that consumes its own people. Rural communities are hollowed out by loss, while cities remain insulated. The cycle of desperation, enlistment, and grief is self-perpetuating. Putin is sacrificing a generation to maintain a stalemate he cannot escape. The official Russian death toll is shocking, but the real number is far higher. Open-source data can't account for missing soldiers or concealed deaths. Western intelligence estimates over 112,000 Russian soldiers killed in 2024 alone. Including proxy forces and contractors, the total death toll could approach 260,700. The Kremlin treats casualty figures as a state secret, prosecuting those who investigate. This information blackout is key to maintaining public support. But graves and grief can't be hidden forever. The truth is seeping out, creating a silent crisis the state cannot contain. The war in Ukraine is a global crisis with profound implications for security and the future of warfare. The drone war shows how cheap technology can devastate nations, a lesson not lost on others. This escalation threatens to make brutal, indiscriminate warfare more common worldwide. For Ukraine, survival depends on resilience and continued support from allies. The relentless attacks test its spirit and resources daily. For Russia, the conflict leads to demographic decline, economic isolation, and moral decay. Putin is trapped, unable to win but unwilling to lose, creating dangerous instability. The world faces a choice: support Ukraine or risk a new era of unchecked aggression. What happens next in Ukraine will define global security for generations. The stakes could not be higher.